Broadcasting live from the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona, in the heart of the great American Southwest. It's Erskine Overnight. Now, here's Erskine.
Happy New Year. And as the New Year is upon us, what could be better than to open up this year with Lowell Ponte, the man for all reasons, because he's a veteran futurist, veteran think tank futurist, worked as roving reporter of Reader's Digest 15 years, did investigative reporting in 13 countries, hosted talk radio programs, syndicated over 300 stations. Nobody's better. He's the author of The Cooling, and maybe we could use a little global warming right now for most of the nation. We're 76 degrees here in Phoenix, but it ain't that way across the upper part of the country and all the way into the Southland. Boy, it's been a mess over there. His book, Money, Morality, and the Machine, you can get totally free. We'll talk about that later. Tonight, taxing time and predictions for 2018, including changes in the petrodollar, the petro-yuan, and that could be a game changer. Welcome and Happy New Year, Dr. Ponte.
Well, how wonderful to be back with you, Erskine. Yeah, I know. It's bitterly, wretchedly cold where I am. Let's see, I think Friday it's hitting 70 degrees, but it's actually been in the high 60s. It's a living hell. I could barely sun by my pool like a California writer these days.
I know most of the country is listening to that and probably saying, y'all just shut up, y'all just shut up. I know, because looking at the weather across there, it's horrible. And this is what you were predicting, the global cooling. And this is what's happening.
Well, and you could see the pattern shaping up very easily. I mean, Dr. Jack Eddy, climatologist at the University Center for Atmospheric Research years ago, did a long piece in Scientific American on the solar maxima. And he pointed out there is a 1,000-year cycle in the sun, and for 100, 150 years, every 1,000 years, the sun seems to turn up its thermostat a little bit. That has more sunspots than usual. And during that period, the sun is putting out enough energy that you have 150 years of warmth. But then that will end abruptly, and things will fall back to normal. And normal is closer to, say, the little ice age that came onto Europe and the Northern Hemisphere around 1348, the same time the plague arrived. And the little ice age got so bad that at what came to be called the Maunder Minimum, about 1645 through 1715, around the world there were no spots observed on the face of the sun at all.
Wow.
And without sunspots, the sun is just cooler. It's more normal, and typically in this 1,000-year cycle, once the 150 years is done, you can look forward to 850 years of extreme cold. For example, at the depth of the Little Ice Age, Eskimos were observed landing in northern Scotland just by fishing the edge of the Arctic ice pack. That's how bad it was. The ports of New York, Philadelphia, Boston were routinely frozen shut in winter. In 1815, they had the year without summer, when snow and ice remained in the shadow of rocks and trees all 12 months of the year.
Wow.
In the Northeast. That tapered off gradually, ending with dramatic events like the blizzard of 1888 that dumped 30 feet of snow in downtown New York City. People literally were getting into their homes by breaking in the third-story windows of their houses. It was a rather grim time, but that was as things were warming up, and the warmth was providing evaporation. The evaporation turned to snow. What we're seeing now is more classic, pure cold, based not so much on snow as just the thermostat falling off the bottom. I mean, 20, 25 below with wind chill in Omaha, Nebraska.
Right. And this is to be expected for a while. We are into it now. It's to be expected even through the summertime. Am I correct on that?
It could be. I mean, it's easy to confuse weather from climate. For example, they assumed we were going into a La Nina phenomena, which tends to be less rainy in much of the United States.
Right.
However, there's now some indication we may be slipping back into an El Nino, which can bring very heavy rain. So day-to-day weather, year-to-year, it's modulated by that. But we've seen a general pattern in the direction of cooling now since 1940. You see, the difference between climate and weather, one key difference, is climate is measured in 30-year increments.
Right.
And there has not been a single 30-year increment in which the temperature was going up. The 30-year increments have all either been neutral, like the last 30 years, when you weigh them out, or they have been cooling, like from 1940 till 1980 was a period of cooling.
This betting on global warming could be a disaster, especially as far as crops and that type of situation, food supplies. It could be a disaster, and we've thrown how much money into global warming?
Oh, they'd like us to throw $100 trillion into it and give vast amounts of power over private property, business, and so on to governments to lower the temperature by a few thousandths of 1 degree. The problem is, if they can't even predict whether it's warming or cooling in the long run, if the advocates like Al Gore have had to resort to saying climate change because they've been so often wrong about warming.
Right.
I mean, they're just saying that whatever the weather is, it's getting warmer, it's getting cooler, it's getting wetter, it's getting drier. Any of that can be attributed to global warming. But understand from the beginning that it was a con game. Now, that's not to say it may not have been warming for a period of time. What it is to say is governments were trying to use that period of time to justify vast expanses in government wealth and power.
Absolutely.
And they still are.
Control.
And their hope pushing this originally was very straightforward. They were scheming to be able to lock down a lot of government power and a lot higher taxes and so on. And then, when the warming did not continue, they were planning to turn to the American people and the European people and say, boy, it's good you gave us all that power just in time. We saved you. When, in fact, they didn't save anything. And what happened is, because people like me were standing up and arguing against them, and we delayed their taking those extreme steps, they can't turn around now and claim that the extreme steps are still needed when they haven't been able to show warming for almost 20 years.
Wow. Well, it all is part of global taxation, and this goes back to biblical times, and you're saying you wrote a wonderful article called Taxing Time, even though it's more of a Christmas article, but in the taxation, Christmas taxation, that's why Joseph and Mary had to travel, because Caesar Augustus declared that the world had to be taxed.
Well, if I could drop in just a quick footnote before we start climate, keep in mind that this isn't just me theorizing it. I mean, we have UN officials who were involved in the IPCC and the great United Nations climate effort saying outright that their objective was to change the economic model of the world that had prevailed for the last 150 years, which is to say capitalism.
Sure.
They just outright said they want to convert to a socialist model. And this is the way to do it. By saying we're not individuals, we're all tied together by the global climate, and therefore we have to have a socialist control system.
And if you can tie together taxation with that, which is another part of their idea, then you've got a whole package where they control everything, and the elites are walking away fat, dumb, and happy, whereas the rest of us are all screwed.
Power to kill.
Right. We'll return in just a moment. Dr. Lowell Ponte.
We'll be launching those missiles in about 2 minutes, so don't you... Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
Well, when I was reading your article, Taxing Time, I was thinking about his crying time again. because anytime you talk about taxing, but this is not necessarily a bad thing. And like most of the things that occur, you've got the liberals who are screaming, the world's coming to an end because of global warming. Pelosi's screaming, it's Armageddon. Thousands are going to die if taxes are cut. Thousands going to die if taxes are cut? You know, why do we even need taxes, Lowell? Because the government can print its own money. Do we really need taxing?
As was said by a fellow named Rummel, who was head of the New York Fed back in 1946, he was drunk one night and gave a speech that revealed all kinds of things. Yes, the government can just print all the money it wants. It doesn't need to take the money directly from you or me. We get taxed anyway, because for every dollar the government prints, you have to understand that money is just a commodity.
Sure.
It's a commodity like potatoes or corn or anything else. Now, you walk into the local market, and cabbage is $1 a head, let's say. What's going to happen if everyone suddenly has twice as many dollars to spend? Well, cabbage is suddenly going to start costing you $2 a head. I mean, they can repeal some things. I wish, for example, politicians had the power to repeal gravity. I wouldn't have to diet so much after the holidays. But they don't. And likewise, they don't have the ability to repeal the natural law of supply and demand. You increase the supply of dollars, and the demand for dollars will rise to meet it. I mean, this is the difficulty. If you have twice as many dollars, everything will cost twice as much. That's the fallacy of raising the minimum wage, for example. And by the way, you've seen these campaigns by unions to raise the minimum wage of hamburger flippers.
Right.
Which seems incredibly noble until you realize, A, that they aren't the only ones who will benefit, and B, the unions have contracts that have clauses in them that guarantees that if the guy down on the bottom getting minimum wage somewhere gets a raise, they automatically get a comparable raise.
Oh.
That is, if minimum wage was $7 and you now raise it to $10, what do you now have to do with the guy who had worked his way up to $10 an hour? Well, you have to raise his wage to $13.
Right.
And to the guy who was earning $13, you have to raise his wage to $16, and so on. And the unions, be it at the top of the pay scale, have clauses, elevator clauses, that naturally make them much more prosperous if they can get somebody else's income raised. Even though, as they know perfectly well, when the hamburger flippers suddenly have to be paid $15 an hour, they're not going to be paid that. What's going to happen is they've just made it cost-effective for the company to hire machines to flip hamburgers automatically.
Right. Well, I know it's like even at McDonald's, they're putting in kiosks instead of having people taking the orders. You just have to punch in your own order. So they're cutting back on that.
They'll put the workers out of work for the most part at McDonald's. But they'll still be union workers, and they'll still make lots of money. By the way, this is part of the challenge that Trump has in cutting taxes on big business. Will they actually hire more people, or will they be like Amazon? Amazon, as you know, over the holidays, brought onto employment 75,000 more workers. The only catch is they were robots. They were robot workers, which don't go on strike, which don't get sick, which don't demand higher pay, and so on, which could work 24 hours a day. And so you could very well sync human employment with that kind of thing. The other problem, of course, to that, just parenthetically, think of the blue-collar workers who used to vote Democrat. The unions were so successful in getting their wages raised to a high level that they began to think, taxes are awfully high on my wages. Maybe I should vote Republican.
Right.
It changed a lot of things. But there's that fear, and there's the fear with the tax break that companies will bring home $2.5 to $5 trillion they have overseas, but they'll use it to reward their stockholders with dividends, or they'll use it to buy back their own stock, thereby making it more valuable.
But by the same token, we've seen a lot of companies that put millions back into the giving to the workers and expanding their business. This is Trump's dilemma or his gamble.
Well, That's true. And, of course, the other problem we have with democracy as it is today is we have two major political parties, one of which is vaguely pro-capitalist, the other of which is actively hostile to capitalism. And they say that for all the regulations and things Trump has been able to roll back, he's mostly done it with executive orders, the way that Obama imposed them. In other words, he used an executive order to unwind an Obama executive order. The difficulty being, what happens the next time a Democrat becomes president? Can they, in one day, write new executive orders to countermand and restore the regulations that Trump has undone?
They certainly can, unless they put it through Congress and take a congressional vote on it.
Yeah, and so Craig Smith and I, in the 7 books we've written, have argued that the mere presence of the Democratic Party, the big government party, is to create a thing we call donkey drag. With donkey drag on the economy, are you going to invest all you could in a new company or in hiring more people? No, you're not, because you always have to worry that the next election, and there's always one within 2 years, the Democrats will enlarge their power. And suddenly you will be hit with confiscatory taxes again. Suddenly you'll be hit with, well, confiscatory regulation. You have to remember, too, these terms like taxes and regulations and so on are highly deceptive. For example, our taxes really are welfare. You may think they're beneficial, but in fact, in the last year we have, 2016, there were 30,417,609 people who paid zero income tax, but they got back, through things like the Earned Income Tax Credit and other special privileges, they got back $89.6 billion.
Wow.
In other words, the average non-taxpayer got back from the IRS $2,945.57. Think about that. So the tax system is not just gathering revenue for the government. It is basically acting as a welfare system.
Income redistribution to benefit their friends, punish their enemies, and to control the population, right?
And that's one of the two reasons why Rummel back in 1946, by the way, Rummel is a name that Beardsley Rummel should be well known and cursed every time you hear it. This is the guy who invented federal income tax withholding from your paycheck, among other things. He is just a devil in human form.
Clever idea. If you don't see it, you don't miss it, right?
Oh, you actually bless the government for giving you money back, as if it was giving you money that isn't already yours to begin with, that was taken from you.
I got a big refund. I'm so happy. Yeah, it's your money to start with. You just didn't see it when it went, thanks to Rummel, who put in the withholding. So you never see it, you don't miss it. It's clever, isn't it?
Yes, welcome to being one of the people.
More we return with Lowell Ponte.
Erskine has gone to see a man about a mule.
So why don't you just kick back and let's listen to Erskine overnight while I puff on my favorite stogie. Hey now, I wouldn't lie to you.
Hey, keep up to date with Lowell Ponte's articles by going to Pontification blog, WordPress, or going to www.American Thinker. If you can't remember that, go to Erskine Overnight and just click on and look at that because it's all up there. Now, the other thing that we were going to talk about are 2018 predictions. You say in 2018, investing is going to be risky. Risky. I think investing's always risky. We've got a couple of things. The stock market is extremely high, according to what I think and what a lot of other people think. And we've got two legs that we're standing on. One is the military, one is the economic. And you've got this major problem with China. Talk a little bit about that, if you will, please.
Yeah, well, basically what it comes down to, Donald Trump in his national security speech on December 18th said that rival powers, Russia and China, seek to challenge American influence, values, and wealth. A week earlier, the White House National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said China was committing economic aggression, and Russia and China are undermining international order and stability. The order they're talking about is popularly called the Pax Americana. You may notice that since World War II, the United States, ruling much of the planet, has had the effect of making this the most peaceful, well, at least Europe, the most peaceful, since it's been in 2,000 years, since the Pax Romana, under the Roman Empire of Caesar Augustus. And why is that? Well, because we laid our nuclear umbrella over Europe in the form of NATO, and we laid our economic system over Europe in a way that covered their military expenses, thereby freeing up whatever money they decided to make to go build wonderful welfare states that liberals here could envy. Now, the problem is all of that was based on a thing called the dollar as the dominant currency in the world, the world's currency. The problem is, in 1971, we had printed so much money to fight the Vietnam War, and we had such an arrangement with our European allies called the Eurodollar, that although Americans couldn't convert their dollars into gold directly, the Europeans still could. And France began to say, well, we've got this mountain of paper dollars we've gathered here. We'd like to trade that for all the gold in Fort Knox.
Did they have enough dollars to trade for all of our gold?
Apparently they did, yes.
Wow.
Because our gold was at a controlled price of $32 an ounce.
Oh, I guess they did, right.
So it wasn't $1,300 an ounce as it has been this past week. But therefore, Nixon took the hard decision in 1971 to pull out his axe and chop off the gold anchor from the dollar. The dollar promptly lost a third of its purchasing power in the world, but he was able to turn and make a secret deal with the Saudis. And that secret deal said, if you will continue to accept only U.S. dollars as payment for your oil, thereby keeping the dollar protected as the world's reserve currency. In other words, let us go from a gold standard to a quasi-gold standard of Bretton Woods agreement to a petrodollar standard.
Right.
The dollar linked to oil in the world. Then we will pay for it in blood.
I also thought that the dollar was supposed to be precious metal, according to the Constitution.
Oh, we haven't obeyed the Constitution for 200 years. Surely you did. No, actually, we still were a gold standard until, effectively, FDR chopped it off for Americans in 1933. And he made it illegal for an American to own gold unless you were a dentist who used it in making gold fillings.
Right.
Or unless you were a collector of numismatic coins. Coin collectors were allowed to keep their gold coins. But gold as bullion, gold as the basis of our money, and most important back then, we had contracts that had gold clauses in them, and that was all abolished. What a gold clause in a contract meant is you could specify, and it usually was specified in big contracts, we would like this to be paid off either in U.S. dollars or in such and such an amount of gold.
Yeah, it used to be the dollar bill was convertible for an ounce of silver. They had the silver certificates. A lot of people remember that.
Yeah, Lyndon Johnson abolished that for the same reason Nixon a few years later abolished. He did that in the mid-'60s. And thereafter, Nixon abolished the gold link, which was all that was left. So now the dollar is really convertible to nothing. But it used to be convertible to something solid, not just the good faith and credit of the promissory notes of politicians. The same politicians who, for example, stole $2.66 trillion from the Social Security Trust Fund and then replaced it with IOUs, saying, we'll pay this back later, meaning we'll have to collect taxes to pay it back all over again, but we want the money now.
But now we've got another problem. We've got the gold attached to the the dollar attached to the petro, and we've become the world reserve currency based on that. But you've got China that is making a big difference. They're making a major run where they're attaching their dollar, the yuan, to gold, and they're also saying, we'll work with buying and selling oil in the yuan. If you go to that, then you can transfer it into gold. I mean, that's a game changer, isn't it?
Well, what they're saying is you can write a contract, and the contract is backed with gold, which is something the U.S. and Saudis do not do for people because, frankly, politicians don't like gold. You see, when Nancy Pelosi said that the new tax law is the end of the world Armageddon, she was referring to her own political party, the Democrats, because they have this little con game going. And the con game is very much like what they had in Jesus' time. You know, the Roman Empire did not collect taxes in Judea of Jesus' time. Rather, they had consortia of rich people or entities who worked in Rome, and they would say, oh, well, we will bid for the Roman Empire X number of sesterces or whatever to be the official tax collector in Caesarea or Jerusalem or whatever, or Tiberias. And the winner of that bidding would then have to pay the empire immediately for that amount, but then it was granted Roman imperial authority to collect taxes, which means they were given the power to squeeze whatever they could out of the people in that region.
Wow! So that certainly puts a new picture and a new look on Matthew, who became a disciple of Jesus. Jesus didn't have the best of people around him, did he?
Well, he made a point that he did not come here to preach to the righteous. He came here to preach to sinners, and there was no bigger sinner than a tax collector like Matthew in Rome.
It really wasn't.
In Judea.
Isn't it interesting how so much links up to 2,000 years ago? It is just incredible to me to see.
You realize we're doing that same kind of tax collecting today, as we'll explain.
Okay, we'll be right back with Lowell Ponte.
Don't go postal. Erskine will be right back.
Now that you don't have to kick dick around anymore, you're probably like all the rest. You listen to Erskine overnight, don't you?
Tax collection, 2018 style. How is it so similar to what was happened 2,018 years ago?
Well, first, I hope you realize why we should kick dick around. I mean, he ultimately destroyed the dollar as convertible to anything. So he is also a Keynesian now, as it were. The point being, when we had a gold dollar, the politicians could not just spend or print as much money as they wanted. They were limited by how much they could cover back with gold. And therefore, they had gold handcuffs on. Government could only grow so big.
Right.
That's why the founder wanted a precious metal standard behind our money.
Doesn't that stop the boom and bust cycles a lot if you have it based on a gold standard?
Well, what stops the boom and bust cycles is having honest money.
Right.
So that makes it honest. I mean, the problem is, if you don't know how many dollars the government is going to print this year, if you don't know whether they're going to print $1 trillion out of thin air or print nothing, you don't really know how much the dollar is worth, because its value is based on supply and demand, which is one thing they can't repeal in the Congress. Anyway, why is our tax collection similar, or why was Nancy Pelosi so eager to call it Armageddon if that was changed? Because our system was based on taxing business at a confiscatory level, about 46% federal, state, and local. And accordingly, from Nancy Pelosi's point of view, that was a wonderful thing because they would gouge business, not individuals particularly. And then the business would pay a lot of tax to the government, and they would then pass on the cost of that tax, it's just another cost of doing business, to the consumer. And then Nancy Pelosi would be able to stand on her soapbox and say, look at those greedy capitalists. Look how much they're charging you for what you're buying. Don't you want to get rid of them? Because it's not shown on the price tag that half the price of everything you're paying is really taxes
right.
that the company is made to carry. So in other words, the company is used as an unpaid tax collector by the government to take the heat off the politicians.
It's a shell game. It's much like if you don't see it, you don't know. The same thing that Rommel did with the withholding tax.
Exactly. But the point being that when politicians do this, as they did in ancient Rome, they can blame private tax collectors for this evil. They get the money, they get it up front, and then they get to blame others for however much stress that tax puts on the society, however much donkey drag is imposed on the people. Now,
let's get into China.
So the economic leg of the U.S. is undermined by China putting forth a serious challenge to the status of the U.S. dollar as the world's dominant currency, and that they're very much doing. Now, our other leg is military, and that was symbolized by what we did with NATO Europe after World War II. That is, we provided the protection for them so they didn't have to pay for their own military. And as you heard Trump say in his national security speech December 18th, they've been very reluctant to pay us for all the cost we've incurred, even though they're now wealthy. They're not paying us for our NATO money. They're just letting U.S. taxpayers cover it. And yet, Europe is apparently willing to pay something because on December 14th, only 4 days before Trump's speech, the 23 of the European Union's 28 members enacted PESCO, P-E-S-C-O, the Permanent Structured Cooperation Agreement that creates first military cooperation, then integration, and ultimately replacement of the individual nation militaries with one European Union military, autonomous from NATO. Understand this, up till now NATO has been under U.S. command, but under PESCO it will be under European command. That's who will have the armies of Europe. How will they use them brutally overseas? Perhaps. But even more importantly, they can now guarantee there will never be another Britain voting to Brexit to leave the European Union.
Has Germany got their Fourth Reich?
24 hours notice, they can fly 50,000 troops to your capital.
Yeah, but looking at the situation, the situation is that the European Union is controlled by Germany. Is this the new Fourth Reich?
It very well could be. This is Germany's third big attempt to control Europe, to end the 400-year European Civil War to dominate the continent. It made three tries in World War I and World War II. The euro currency and the European Union was largely put together after World War II as their attempt to control the continent and impose first economic and then military. I've quoted to you before how the founder of the European Union said that the superstate would be developed and strengthened non-democratically. People really aren't allowed to vote against it, and that it would suddenly emerge as this irresistible dominant force. Once they control the military of Europe, that will be the ultimate dominant force. But
by the time it emerges and is moving rapidly toward that, Europe could be Muslim.
Yes. Interesting, isn't it?
It is very interesting.
They have this huge nuclear arsenal that already existed in England and France. It will be under Muslim control. They will be the democratic controllers of Europe. And they'll probably merge with the Muslim nations of the Middle East.
The only bloc that rival the U.S. is actually the European Union. California has double the GDP of Russia. I didn't know that. That I'll learn from that article. We'll be right back with Lowell Ponte.
Now, don't go getting your pantyhose in a bunch. Erskine will be...
Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
of other predictions for 2018. Trump is he's hated by the elites. If they try to take him out, we could end up with a civil war in this country because unless they have some real reason, something very, very solid, which nobody's seen so far. And the Bitcoin, that could lead to a total surveillance because with Bitcoin, you it's all internet, it's all controlled by the web, and that's exactly what the government wants. Now, I have learned so much reading the books of Lowell Ponte and Craig Smith, and the last one that he wrote, Money, Morality, and the Machine, is a summary of so many different things. If you want to understand the mind and the thinking of a futurist, where you get it from, you go to the past, you go to the present, and then you extrapolate that into the future and looking at the entire situation. Money, Morality, and the Machine combines it all together. It's perhaps the best one that you have written. I really believe that because it combines so much together. Not the crashing dollar, the inflation, deception, the great withdrawal. All of these were wonderful, but this one combines it all together. It's a book I highly recommend. This is something that somebody who reads it, they can start to do their own look into the future based on what you've got written in that book, can't they?
Oh, I would like to think so. And we do a lot of futurist analysis in the book, including just how true a lot of science fiction is coming and what amazing things can already be done with technology. Craig Smith, my co-author of this and 7 books altogether, you see every week on with Neil Cavuto on Fox Business. He is a monetary expert, and we have a lot of fun writing these books. But Craig is also a very, very successful person. I mean, up at the billionaire level. And therefore, we don't care about making a few dollars from these books. We just care about giving people information. This is our Blues Brothers mission from God. So for your listeners, Erskine, wherever you may be, if you would like a free post-paid copy of the book, it will not cost you a thing. It's just given to you for the information of it. 250 pages. It reads like a novel, but it's all too shockingly true. You just call a toll-free number to get it, 800-630-1492, like the year Columbus sailed the ocean blue. You leave your name and number. We'll get back to you. We'll send you the form of the book you'd like best, 800-630-1492. You've got nothing to lose. You have a world to gain, if we dare say. And the irony, of course, is people were familiar with England voting Brexit to leave the European Union, which is an attempt to impose unelected bureaucrats, as they've been doing with Trump and the hidden state here. But England rejected it. Well, they won't be able to once Europe has its own military and can impose that. What's most interesting, though, is that even as England was seceding from the European Union now is seceding from NATO. And our press isn't even covering it.
They're not only seceding from NATO, but you've got, who else is in NATO? Turkey and countries like that. But in the, you've got Austria that's part of the European Union. And look at what's happening. They're all voting for their own population. They're all voting for their own people. They're basically voting the same way people did for Mr. Trump. They are for, let's make Austria great again. Let's make Poland great again. The people are uprising in Europe right now.
Well, they either uprise or they'll simply be taken away. I mean, they're going to lose their great bureaucratic empire.
Start the new year right. Get a copy of
Our Time for Economics.
Money, Morality, and the Machine.
Broadcasting live from the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona, in the heart of the great American Southwest. It's Erskine Overnight. Now, here's Erskine.
Dr. Charles B. Simone, M.D., an internist, medical oncologist, radiation oncologist, tumor immunologist, author, and veteran health advocate. He's been called cancer's worst enemy and founded the Simone Protective Cancer Institute. His cancer and nutrition 10-point plan for prevention and cancer life extension, now has third printing. The Truth About Breast Cancer, Truth About Prostate Cancer. These two books set the bar for increased understanding. How to Save Yourself from a Terrorist Attack and Medical Hydration. Military strategy for military and athletic warriors have aided the military, aided the Olympians. Dr. Simone's plan to overhaul healthcare is needed to save our healthcare system and our country. He has appeared on 60 Minutes, Primetime Live, Fox News Channel, and others. He's on the cutting edge of cancer research. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of different issues. DrSimone.com, SimoneSuperEnergy.com. And first off, I want to talk about dangers of energy drinks. And we've talked about that before, but we've really got to talk about this. The energy drinks are sending a lot of people, lots and lots of people, to hospitals every day, and this is really a bad situation. I think a number of people in the hospital going there for ER visits, 21,000, 20 deaths, because it increases heart contraction rates within 1 hour. Higher risk of cocaine use, of alcohol, and prescription stimulants with these energy drinks. Plus, some of them, like Gatorade, and some of those have as much salt as you have in salt water. You want to be drinking salt water? It's a poison, isn't it?
It is that.
But with the Simone Super Energy, you don't get any of that. You get everything that's good for you. And I know with my wife and others, she's been using it, and her energy level has increased tremendously after using it.
The caffeine is the big problem, and the sodium is a big problem in these drinks. But the caffeine can actually mimic the need for cocaine, and increases the risk of cocaine use in these people because they want that constant high. So they'll look for the so-called MU receptors on the brain cells that are satisfied by cocaine use.
Now, wouldn't that also stimulate the increased use of opiates?
Both. Yep. Any of these stimulants are prime for this kind of a situation. The more of these drinks, all these stimulant drinks, the more that you consume, the higher the risk is for cocaine and other opioid use as well.
That's incredible. It's incredible that they would allow such a thing to be out there, but that's the way it is. That is exactly what's happened. Now, the other thing that we're going to talk about, a couple of other issues. One of them is what's going on with statins and cancer. The first 6 months of diagnosis believed to extend life. No, it doesn't. They have studied 17,372 cancer patients, no life extension. Is there any reasonable reason why anybody would prescribe a statin drug?
Well, the thinking was in the old days, not too long ago, in fact currently, the thinking was that statins will contribute as an anti-inflammatory effect and decrease the inflammation for the cancer patient. Inflammation, as you know, is a major cause of cancer, heart disease, and many of our other chronic illnesses. So the thinking was, give a statin, decrease the inflammation, and live longer. And that was given; those were given in observational studies. But once this major study came out with 17,000 cancer patients, there was absolutely no issue that life was extended for any cancer patient who were on statins.
And statins are also supposed to decrease cholesterol, but if you're older, you need the cholesterol because it's brain food.
That's right. That's right. The statin story is another unhappy story. We'll get into the opioid story in a minute, but the statin story is another unhappy story that has been set with paid studies, with paid physicians, and unhappily through the FDA as well.
One of the things that I've noticed, and we talk a lot about Big Pharma, we talked about the trickery of raising prices, Merck with the Pembrolizole or Keytruda for lung cancer, 2 milligrams per kilogram patient's weight was the treatment dose. So what they come out with, 150 milligrams and 50 milligram vials, so that you had to buy extra. They also, there's a inhalators that they use here. Even with the insurance, it was costing $35 a piece. Mexico, you could get three of these inhalers for less than $6, whereas it's $35 with insurance for one. The prices that they're charging is absolutely insane on a lot of these drugs, isn't it?
And it's permitted by our government. Our government will not negotiate because the government people, the Congress, members of Congress and Senate, there are 6 lobbyists for every one of these elected officials from the big pharma industry.
Six lobbyists for, oh my God.
For each one of these people. So imagine the dollars flowing, the luncheons, the dinners, and everything else that happened.
Let's talk about one of America's great families, because this family supports anywhere you go. There's an art museum, be it the Washington, be it Harvard, the Center of Arts at Guggenheim, the Louvre, Yale, Cornell, Columbia, Tufts, McGill, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Sussex, King's College of London, hospitals and all. And it's the Sackler family. Nobody knows exactly who they were, but this is one of America's richest and great families because they're so benevolent. They give to all of these art museums. There's rooms at all of these places dedicated to the Sacklers and what they've done. What wonderful, magnificent people they must be. You're looking at it, and they bought their respectability. But who these people are? These people own a company used to be called Purdue Frederick. I think it's called Purdue Pharmaceuticals now. And they are the marketers of OxyContin. You had 3 members, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond. They all were psychiatric physicians. But this OxyContin's causing 145 deaths a day from opioid overdose, $80 billion healthcare costs, plus criminal justice, plus the loss of work from the use of this. These are nothing more, in my opinion, I'm saying this, than dope dealers and peddlers of death.
Well, there's no question about that. These 3 brothers, all born here in the United States in Brooklyn, became physicians that worked in psychiatry and learned how to influence human behavior. And
well, Arthur even had his own ad agency, didn't he? He really knew how to.
That's right, he did, and all things were going for him because Hoffman LaRoche, contacted him to increase the sales of Valium. Now, Valium is identical drug almost compared to another drug that Roche was doing.
Librium.
What was happening?
Yeah, it was almost identical to Librium.
Yeah, and they couldn't make any more sales, so what the Sackler did, he said to the doctors, look, let's prescribe it for anybody who has any problem at all, whether they're psychiatric patients or not. And they brought in over $100 million in that one drug, and hooked many patients became addicts because of it. It's
really interesting how he did it. He started he got Medical Tribune and MD publications that went to 600,000 physicians, and then he had it all published, his findings that he wrote up himself, and had other doctors that they paid to endorse the product. So it was pay for play.
Well, not only that, he paid a man at the FDA, the chief of the antibiotic division, $300,000 now. And that time, that converts to about $867,000. So he paid essentially $867,000 to the single person to promote drugs for him. And that was within the FDA walls at the time. So he not only paid doctors, he paid for reports, he paid hospitals to run these reports. He also paid the FDA at every step of the way.
More when we return about OxyContin.
In about 2 minutes, so don't you... Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
The Sackler family that owns it as a family, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, markets OxyContin, have made billions. Now, OxyContin is a cousin to heroin, 2 times more powerful than morphine, and their target was cancer patients.
And what they decided to do, they had to broaden their market, and so they went to doctors, paid doctors to tell every general practitioner that no matter what kind of pain the person has, give them OxyContin. So that's how it came about. They broadened the market dramatically not just from cancer to cancer patients, but to every other malady, a sore throat, an ache in the arm.
Oh, no.
Things like that. They went on and on.
And then they manufactured it in larger doses so that you get a quicker addiction. They misinformed the doctors about the addictive properties of it, and they said it's safer because it has delayed absorption, according to Dr. Curtis Wright, the FDA. 2 years later, he quit the FDA and got hired by who? Purdue Pharmaceuticals. Right.
Yeah. Now get this, the head of the FDA then said, Dr. Kessler said, well, he didn't know anything about it. He wasn't involved, but he was the pitcher of the team. The team pitcher always gets the loss. He won't take on responsibility for this.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
They approved the warning label and the insert, and the warning label said, "Taken broken, chewed, or crushed OxyContin will lead to rapid release and absorption of a potentially toxic dose." And this warning essentially informed people how they can get a quick high if they crush the pill into a powder, then snort it or injected it once they put it in liquid. So they developed a recipe for addiction quickly, and babies became quickly addicts from pregnant mothers as well, all because of these words and the FDA approval of these words with this Curtis Wright fellow.
Dr. Russell Portnoy, pain specialist at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital, regarded as one of the best in the world. They paid him to say that opioids have few side effects and concerns about addictions are a medical myth. How could any doctor say that?
Well, if you're paid enough, you can say a lot of things.
I guess you could, but you've got a list of all the doctors and people who were paid off on this, and it's huge. Yeah. It's huge.
This Dr. Haddock guy, he wrote a position statement that opioids should be used for treating pain. This position statement became the statement for American Academy of Pain Medicine and the American Pain Society, and both of these organizations were funded with millions of dollars from Purdue Pharma. These organizations insisted that pain be one of the vital signs that all doctors must ask and record every patient visit on a 1 to 10 scale. Now, you and I both know patients will come in and tell you exactly how many points they have on a pain scale, and this then became legitimate use of opioids for all patients, not just with cancer, anybody else. So if they came in and said, "Doctor, I have a pain in my arm of a 6 out of 10, they were given these OxyContin pills. So they paid the doctors, they paid these societies to launch this campaign, which is now a standard in every record during every patient visit.
Wow. Now, the outcropping of this is that many addicts start using heroin because prescription opioids were too expensive or too difficult to obtain. They're making people into addicts, and this is one of the problems. And then what did that lead to? The number of people dying each day, 145 deaths a day due to opioid overdose. Now, what about the lawsuit they had in the state of Kentucky? What happened with that?
Well, it was, the 2007 lawsuit, they pleaded guilty to felony charges. Once the Justice Department caught up with them, they had to plead guilty to felony charges for criminally misbranding OxyContin and for lying to doctors that it was less addictive. Purdue paid $600 million in fines, and the three major executives, the medical director, the president, and the general counsel, pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges, got off scot-free, and just paid $34 million. But here's the kicker. No Sackler was ever named in that suit, and no Sackler will ever be named in any future lawsuit because the agreement that they struck stated that new criminal litigation could only address the issues after 2007. And after 2003, no Sackler was ever in an executive position.
Wow. The president of Tufts University, this was so telling. Anthony Monaco said of Raymond Sackler, the last of the three brothers, it'd be impossible to calculate how many lives you have saved, how many scientific fields you've redefined, and how many new physicians, scientists, and mathematicians, your engineers, are doing important work as a result of your entrepreneurial spirit. You're a world changer. He's a world changer, all right, isn't he?
Yeah, you know what philanthropy can buy is immortality, respect and awe, and money erases any evil origins of that money.
They're just a group of dope peddlers who made a ton of money doing it because they're medical doctors. This is an affront to medicine. It's an affront to every honest physician in the world.
Yeah, what they did, the Sacklers were very clever. They knew this. They made sure that their name was never associated with OxyContin, never associated with Purdue Pharma, and they made sure then to promote themselves by attaching and weaving the Sackler name into the most highly recognized institutions, evoking immediate respect and awe. And that's how they got away with this. And that's how they're getting away with this. And at the end of my write-up in the article, I say that two things I should recommend. The organize of an opioid master settlement agreement, similar to the tobacco master settlement. Sure. Let's see if that'll ever happen with Chris Christie, the so-called prosecutor. Will he do it? I'm not sure he will, but it will cost billions of dollars and many more billions to prevent and educate people about these issues. And the second issue I make in my recommendations, let's see also if all those Ivy League schools, all those museums, all those hospitals, all those endowed chairs that receive money from the Sacklers and their companies will now remove the Sackler name and transfer those dollars to the opioid master settlement agreement.
Not going to happen. That'll never happen. You know that. Money rules, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I mean,
and do you ever hear about this in the other than print media? I've never heard it in the broadcast television or cable broadcast media.
I heard them talking about the Sacklers on Michael Savage. Other than that, I haven't heard about it anywhere else.
Yeah, just doesn't happen. The big pharma dollars are too important.
Look on television, look at all the ads. It's like everybody's got some sort of intestinal problem. I'm looking at this. Letting them advertise prescription medicines and things on television has led to an overuse of various medicines where people can go in, saw it on TV, and demand of this from their doctor. This has not been a good situation, has it?
Well, it's been a great situation for Big Pharma. They planned it, they wanted it, and they got it. These drugs are being sold left and right.
Every magazine you pick up, everything that you see has this in it. A lot more when we get back with Dr. Simone.
So why don't you just kick back and let's listen to Erskine overnight while I puff on my favorite stogie. Hey now. I wouldn't lie to you.
We're talking with Dr. Charles Simone, and all this is up on ErskineOvernight.com, but you'll want to go to his website, drsimone.com, and SimoneSuperEnergy.com. Simone Super Energy can really help you. Nothing bad, everything good, and it'll make you feel much more energetic and feel much better. I know it's helped my wife, and let me tell you something else about it. It doesn't taste bad either. It comes in orange, chocolate, and vanilla, and it really will pick you up in a positive way. This is not negative. This will give you real energy as opposed to the fake energy that you get with so many other things, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's no stimulants in here. There's ribose and fructose, very low and negative receptors for glycemic index. So lots of energy with little or no insulin stimulation. No stimulants at all. Causes no problems. And the pH, the critical thing also for cancer patients or any other chronic illness is the high pH, 7.5, 7.6 alkaline pH. And that's very important because acid and inflammation are what drives cancers and all of our other chronic illnesses.
One of the things you talked about was how dangerous salt is. But I'll tell you, other than I found a good website called Hacking Salt. So if you're eating out a lot or whatever, you've really got to watch out. It amazed me, Dr. Simone. I went to Olive Garden, and I thought, well, the salad's going to be okay. The salad dressing has 580 milligrams of salt per tablespoon. The salad dressing at Olive Garden, that you have 2 tablespoons, and you've blown your mouth that you should have for a day. It's crazy.
Well, think about a patient who actually has a dysfunctional heart and eats that little bit of salad dressing. The next day, that patient will gain 2, 3, or 4 pounds of water weight easily.
Wow.
That's a lot of water in there just for that little bit of salad dressing.
And there are certain restaurants you can't even go to, according to that. You can't go to Red Robin. You can't go to Jack in the Box. There are certain ones you just can't go to. Some of these sandwiches have 2,400 milligrams of salt in them. Since talking with you, I was absolutely blown away. They're killing people.
Oh, they are. Lots of sodium. And what that does is make them drink more and ask for more food as well.
No wonder they're doing it.
Yeah, no, it's all purposeful. So if you're cooking freshly, you don't need to put all that sodium. If you have frozen foods and fast food places, then you need sodium to preserve them. But neither place do you need them. But that's what it's purposeful for.
So you're better off to cook at home, and then you have to watch what's in. If you're using canned fruits and vegetables, you've got to look at mouth salt and that. I found one other thing. There's hardly any soups you can eat if you're trying to restrict your salt. They put so much salt in every kind of soup.
Again, anything in a can will have high levels of sodium. Anything, whether it's a Coca-Cola, any soft drink beverage, but if it's in a can, the sodium is there to preserve and keep bugs down. So anything in a can will give you a high sodium intake.
Coca-Cola, a can of that has 45 milligrams of sodium.
That's right. Yeah,
and you've got it in most of the canned drinks, not all of them. Now, the other thing that they're doing, we've talked about it before, but I think we need to go back to this because they're really pushing flu vaccines. Yeah. Everywhere you go, they're pushing it. Oh, zero copay. Come on in and get your flu vaccine. You go went over to the Kroger, and at Kroger they said, well, if you're not going to get the vaccine, you need to sign this. I said, I don't need to sign anything. I'm not going to take it because I don't think it's good for you. And the flu is essentially 200-plus viruses. The vaccine only gets type A and B. And the question is, Dr. Simone, does this stuff work?
No. In fact, the 2016-2017 attenuated flu vaccine has been told as being ineffective by our Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the National Institute of Health. So there's no reason to get it. The government says it's not effective.
Babies, it doesn't work on. Adults, 48 reports of 66,000 adults. It works 6% of the time. Reduced days work, less than 1 day. If you're talking about older people, it doesn't work for them either. But you do have some possible side effects, and the side effects could be narcolepsy, febrile convulsions, Guillain-Barré. You've got a lot of different side effects that could happen with this, don't you?
That's right. For a vaccine that doesn't work, why take any risk at all?
But they're still pushing it. Why are they pushing this so hard? I mean, well, okay, if you get the flu and you've taken the vaccine, why are they pushing it so hard?
Well, there's money involved, big money. Imagine everybody in the country getting a flu vaccine for $20 a pop. That's a lot of money. Given these facts that it doesn't work and it causes all kinds of problems, no company or organization should demand that their employees receive the flu vaccine. Many companies do. Many organizations do. Many hospitals demand that the employees have a flu shot. Otherwise, they can't come to work. Now, we know that it doesn't work. The government says it doesn't work for that particular vaccine, and yet it's still demanded by hospitals, companies, organizations.
Can taking the vaccine give you the flu?
Yes. It's been shown many times. Absolutely right.
I've heard that, but then I'd heard it was a myth. But, okay, enough people have said that they got the flu. Never had the flu before until they took the damn vaccine.
That's right, yeah.
Now,
the best means of reducing your risk of contracting the flu is simple. Frequent decontamination techniques of washing hands and the face and proper sinus hygiene, hydrogen peroxide gargle, proper hydration, a good multi-formula, vitamin formula, zinc 50 milligrams. This is very important. Zinc 50 milligrams once every week during the flu season.
Okay.
That's been shown to decrease the life-death ratio. And zinc lozenges. Quercetin, which blocks the receptor of the virus to get into the cell. Vitamin D3, resveratrol, green tea, and vitamin C at about 4 grams a day. These things are simple, inexpensive, and will go a long way of decreasing your risk for contracting the actual flu.
Dr. Pauling turned you on to the vitamin C, didn't he?
Oh, he did, yeah. Wonderful man.
And what was that you showed him?
Well, we had a meeting. They couldn't find us. We were in Philadelphia in one of the institutes, and he and I got locked into a room ourselves. Nobody knew where we were for about 3 hours, and at the end of our talk, he convinced me to start taking more vitamin C than what I was doing, and I convinced him to take a little bit of beta-carotene as well. So it was a good time. What a wonderful man he was. I think I may have told you this story on the air before, but he was so brilliant. So he was giving a talk out in California, and somebody asked him out of the blue, because he was not part of the Manhattan Project, somebody asked him how he would develop a atomic bomb. So he started rattling it right down. I would do this, add this, cook that, and all that kind of thing. And somebody must have called the FBI. The FBI came in during that time, that seminar, and hauled him away. And they realized that he wasn't being a spy or anything. He just scientifically knew how to do it without a whole cadre of people at the Manhattan Project.
He was too dangerous what he knew, even though he never had worked on that. He just knew what it was. Brilliant, man, brilliant. More when we return. Yeah. Dr. Charles Simone.
Now that you don't have to kick Dick around anymore, you're probably like all the rest. You listen to Erskine overnight, don't you?
Dr. Simone, your son, Charles B. Simone II, he works with the photon generator at the University of Maryland. Am I correct?
That's right. He's the director of the proton machine there.
Tell me about the proton machine and what that does, because I am not familiar with it.
Well, protons are a different form of radiation. Now, there's electrons, there are photons and protons, and each has a different mode of treatment and mechanism of action. The protons generally stop exactly where you prescribe them to stop. So if you tell the radiation machine with generating protons to stop it an inch and a half down below the surface of the skin, it will stop precisely at that level. So what it can do is decrease side effects of other adjacent organs if you are precisely directing that proton beam.
So you're using a rifle instead of a shotgun.
Well, yes and no. You can widen the beam to a wide path, but it will stop exactly where you want it to stop and not continue on. And that's the benefit of the proton machine. So it's used in diseases like in the brain, for instance, where it's critical not to proceed on to other normal brain tissue to preserve it and protect it. It's also in spinal cords and lung disease. It's being used a lot more in many other organs now because they've seen such very beneficial results in adjacent organs.
Now,
and that's it. The problem with protons is a huge, huge endeavor, huge cost. My daughter, Nicole, Dr. Nicole Simone, and Dr. Charles Simone brought with the DOD, Defensive Department of Defense, to the University of Pennsylvania, the first big proton machine that was built with those dollars there. And since then, my son has gone to the University of Maryland in Baltimore, and he's the director of that Proton Institute there.
So there are very few around the country.
Well, very few good ones. There's a lot of mom-and-pop shops that are built popping up on the corners, but these are not the high-dose, high-energy protons that the big machine. The big machines require 5 stories high of machinery. You have to cycle these protons. You have to generate them by cycling round and round and round in large oval patterns to get the protons that you need to separate them from electrons and neutrons and other photons. So it takes a lot of energy and a lot of machinery to do it, and many, many stories high. It's a 5-story high building just to generate the proton, and then it's directed into the patient.
I want to talk with you about one other thing that I read that I think is so important and should be in the hands of every lawmaker, and that is the Simone Health Insurance Advantage. Now, it can be used with any insurance plan, generates income for the employer, educates and encourages employees to become healthier. It's cloud-based, so it's very secure. And the wellness programs are expensive, don't reduce health spending, and may actually harm some of the employees. One-time incentive programs don't work either. One of the things that this does is encourages people to become proactive. It encourages people to become educated and take responsibility for their own health. If you've got a controllable risk factor, you should have to pay more. If you're going to smoke, you're going to drink, you're going to do all these things, you should pay a little bit more. You're not saying don't do it, but if you do it, you're going to pay more.
Well, that's the whole point. We have to take responsibility for our actions. We can no longer afford to pay for other people's risk factors that they can control. Obviously, they can't control genetics. Obviously, they can't control certain things, but the ones that are controllable, weight, high blood pressure, cholesterol, smoking, alcohol use, etc., those are the ones that they are able to control, and they are the ones that should be paid. If they don't want to do it, then they don't have to, but then they're going to have to pay the higher cost. The program we developed is patented, and what it happens is if a person comes into the program from any company, they can start decreasing their health costs as their risk factors decrease. So as they lose weight, they're going to pay less money. As the cholesterol comes down, they'll pay less than what they were ordinarily paying. When the blood pressure comes down, less money paid, et cetera. So it's a win-win situation. The patient, the employee, can become more healthy, and these dollars that they're paying will go to the employer to keep more jobs in this country, do the R&D that's necessary in this country. We can create more jobs by simply doing this program. More jobs and get a healthier population as well.
Well, the wellness programs that most places have, they're not working, are they?
Oh, you pay anywhere from $200 to $2,000 per person, and of course not. They don't work at all. It's just a waste of money. The one-time incentive programs are also a fake. It's just a nonsense thing. They don't work. They've never worked. So wellness programs are expensive. They don't work, and they actually harm some people. And the one-time incentive programs do actually work. What we have found is people feel twice as bad about losing $100 compared to feeling good about winning $100. People don't want to pay. That's true. That's psychologically true. So we use a monthly financial incentive to encourage long-lasting health, and we know parting with your own money is painful, but it's very effective. So we can change the health outcome of our nation. And, in fact, if you have a disease, cancer, we're not going to penalize a person. If they get on this kind of a program, they're going to become healthier and live longer with that cancer or heart disease.
This is something that they ought to be looking at because it's so important.
Yeah, that's true.
Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
Two final questions for Dr. Simone. Number one is concerning sleep apnea. That's a major thing that a lot of people are having. You've just come out with a new paper on that. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Well, sleep apnea is responsible for lots and lots of accidents, whether it be in train conductors, engineers, or truckers and things like that. We see it causing heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, diabetes, all chronic diseases, and there are many risk factors for it. For instance, if you're overweight, you have a 400% higher risk of having sleep apnea because of all the fat deposits around your upper airway that may obstruct breathing. If you're a smoker, there's a 300% higher risk because of inflammation and fluid retention in the upper airway. If you're a male, there's a 200% higher risk.
Now, that you can't do anything about, right?
No, not at all. And women, the risk rises after menopause. The other things that can do things about are alcohol, sedatives, and tranquilizers. These all increase risk. Nasal congestion. Again, the excess weight person, neck circumference for men of 17 inches or women 15 inches, higher risk of getting sleep apnea. If the airway is narrowed, or if you have large tonsils or adenoids, family history, and even as you get older, the muscles around the neck get more loose, and there's less holding up of the neck. So what you need to do, lose the risk factors that you can control. It's like anything else, like our medical program that we just mentioned. Control risk factors that you can control, number one. Number two, put a little roll pillow underneath your neck so that the spine of the neck allows you to straighten out the head completely. You want the head to be looking upward, not down. You know, as we're looking at computer program monitors, we're looking down. As we read, we look down. As we sleep with a regular pillow behind our neck, we essentially are curling our head down. We need to straighten that head so it goes way back. And that's what you should do with a little roll behind your neck when you sleep. Not a regular pillow, but a little roll that's comfortable for you behind your neck.
That would make a major difference. And an update real quick on football. And you're saying that those who are under 12 and they're playing tackle football, that can create a problem for the rest of their life.
Forever. Yeah, that young age has major effects on these little kids. And we know a lot about it, that we can see and deal with these kids, but we have to identify and stop them from ever playing these kind of games. Those helmets don't help them at all. Those helmets are just no protection at all.
But you've got a lot of things that come of that. You have behavioral problems is major if they get too many hits, especially as young kids. And that was kind of a surprise to me to see that it would affect children under 12 years old. You wouldn't realize that it would have that type of effect for the rest of their life.
Well, don't forget the brain at that age is very young, very developing. So we see this kind of response a lot. And don't forget the report we talked about last time we were on. It's not an actual blood clot for a concussion. So all you have to do is disrupt the membrane, the cellophane wrapper around the brain. Once you disrupt that, then you build up a certain protein, which then causes all these brain abnormalities.
DrSimone.com, SimoneSuperEnergy.com. Get it. It works. It really works. I'll testify to that. So will my wife. Simone Super Energy. I kind of like the vanilla. She likes the chocolate. Go for it. Dr. Simone, thank you for being on. You are indeed a godsend. You are giving us the truth, and thank you so much for being on my program.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you so
Erskine.
much.
Broadcasting live from the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona, in the heart of the great American Southwest. It's Erskine Overnight. Now, here's Erskine.
Sidney Powell served in the Department of Justice for 10 years. The last 20 years has devoted her private practice to federal appeals. She's had over 500 federal appeals. The youngest assistant U.S. attorney and later became chief of the appellate section, the Western and Northern Districts of Texas. Sidney Powell, recognized by her peers as a super lawyer, named as one of the best lawyers in America for years. Her Amazon best-selling book, and through no help from the media, has been Licensed to Lie. Licensed to Lie. This reads like a legal thriller as she reveals disturbing events, missteps, cover-up, malfeasance, corruption of justice. Tonight, overzealous prosecutors and the credibility of the Mueller investigation with Sidney Powell. Sidney, welcome to Erskine Overnight.
Thank you so much, Erskine. It's always a great pleasure to be on with you.
You got a tweet from Newt Gingrich who said, "License to Lie, about to become very important." Now, what I took that to mean was draining the swamp of those in the Justice Department working against the criminal justice system to rid the Justice Department of federal prosecutors who've indicted and convicted the innocent rather than the guilty and those unfit to practice law. This is not about Republican or Democrat, but justice and the future of America. Isn't that what you took on his tweet?
That's part of what it means. I think what else it means is that it gives you a blueprint of how special prosecutors work and what you can expect from the Mueller hit squad, as I call it, because Mueller pulled into his team. Well, the first person I think he picked was Andrew Weissman, who is the lead villain in the book for all his prosecutorial misconduct. misconduct.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Political prosecutions. Almost 2,000 innocent people were cleared of convictions, lies. Careers were ruined by political prosecutions. And you include Senator Ted Stevens, Governor Rick Perry, Governor Bob McDonnell of Virginia, Representative Tom DeLay, Arthur Anderson, which cost 85,000 jobs. And you've got 4 Merrill Lynch executives. You've got Brad Stinn, CEO of Friedman Jewelers, the top cop in New York City, Bernie Carey. All of those were thrown out. All of them was thrown out. Enron was universally reversed by the Supreme Court, with Justice Rehnquist saying, shocking how little criminal intent the jury instructions required. And who was behind the prosecution on Arthur Anderson? Who was behind the other prosecutions, many of the others? None other than Andrew Weissman. And now he is on the team to get Mr. Trump, right?
That's exactly right.
Now, when you're looking at Weissman, he was promoted by Obama to become deputy director of the FBI. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's really heart-stopping. I call Weissman the poster boy for prosecutorial misconduct, and here he is on Mueller's hit squad.
Yeah, now that should be very disturbing to the president, shouldn't it?
It should be disturbing to everybody. I mean, frankly, when it was originally discussed, I thought, okay, it's going to be great. We'll finally get to the bottom of what really went on with Russia and its influence on the election. And instead of that, it's turned out to be just this, prosecutorial witch hunt for Paul Manafort and Trump's businesses and Jared Kushner's businesses and whoever else they can try to find to bring into it to charge money laundering or whatever else they're going to pull out of thin air.
The danger is, and you state, that a prosecutor can pin something on anyone, but that's not their job.
No, that's not their job. Their job is to seek justice, not convictions, and to seek the truth and to prosecute crimes, not people. And instead, they're out there trying to dig to China to see what they can find.
You got this guy, Frederick. He went to become a top Bush Justice Department person. He's pushed the indictment on Senator Ted Stevens, the 60th seat in Congress, shifted the balance of power in the Senate, allowed Obamacare to pass, and this guy everything he did was overturned. You had Caldwell, who was promoted Assistant Attorney General, Criminal Division, Department of Justice, also involved. Catherine Remler, one of the nastiest people in finding something to pin on people, and longest-serving White House counsel. All of these people were guilty of withholding evidence that would have exonerated folks, weren't they?
They not only withheld it, Erskine, they identified it before trial. They actually yellow highlighted it. I mean, they physically yellow highlighted keywords and key testimony that they knew exonerated the Merrill Lynch defendants. And they hid it from them while these men served up to a year in prison on an indictment that didn't even state a federal offense because they'd also made up the crime. They made up the crimes, they made up facts, and they hid the evidence that showed they were innocent.
So Trump is looking at the same people going after him who made up the crime, made up the offense, and withheld evidence.
Yes, Andrew Weissman was the head of the task force for the entire Merrill Lynch prosecution, sat in the courtroom every day, has been in the grand jury for the testimony of key witnesses who would have exonerated the Merrill defendants, so he knew exactly what they had said. Yes, I hold him responsible for every bit of the wrongful Merrill Lynch prosecution, the wrongful Arthur Anderson prosecution, and the destruction of those 85,000 jobs. I mean, Weissman is just the worst of the worst.
How can a guy like that maintain his legal license after having all of this overturned and being excoriated by justices very great as Emmett O'Sullivan?
Well, Judge Sullivan was on the Ted Stevens case, but Mr. Weissman did not participate in that one. That was Matthew Friedrich, and Friedrich wasn't in the courtroom. He was just pulling the strings behind the scenes. So he didn't take a public excoriation either. But, yeah, is willing to do anything to win. Some of the news media has talked about him being expert at turning witnesses. Well, turning is not the right word for it. He bludgeoned guilty pleas out of people who hadn't even committed a crime to the point that two courts had to allow them to withdraw their guilty pleas. And, they will try and dig up or make up something against somebody and then threaten them with life in prison and to force them to, quote, cooperate, end quote. But cooperate to them means saying exactly what they want you to say, whether it's the truth or not. And then they'll shut down any other person that might testify contrary to either by threatening to indict them for perjury and or threatening to indict them for other things.
He went to the attorneys. He went to the attorneys of anybody who was going to testify, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he was calling people as many as 3 times a day himself during the Merrill Lynch trial to threaten to indict them to keep them off the witness stand for the Merrill Lynch executive.
You had to be going crazy during that trial when you found out what was going on. It took you a while to dig and find out exactly what was happening, didn't it?
Oh, it took me 6 years, and then we also filed ethical grievances with the various bar associations. Bill Hose, who was professor at Indiana Law School and one of the top 3 legal ethics experts in the country, filed a grievance against Weissman with the New York Bar Association. And, oh, you're going to love this. They literally hunted it in the middle of the night to the Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility for them to decide it, even though the Department of Justice Civil Division was representing Weissman in response to the grievance because he was deputy director of the FBI at the time. So
boy, talk about the fox watching the hen house. That's exactly what happened. More when we return. Sidney Powell.
We'll be launching those missiles in about 2 minutes, so... Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
Andrew Weissman, picked to be one of the leaders of the Russia investigation by Robert Mueller, was director of the Enron task force, destroyed Arthur Andersen, lost 85,000 jobs, rewrote jury instructions defining the crime and the intent required. Wrongful conviction was reversed by the Supreme Court, totally reversed. Threatened to indict anyone to testify in the defense, including in-house legal counsel, hid evidence from the defense for years, and this plainly suppressed evidence. This is the person who's in charge or who is working with Mueller, who he tapped. Was it because Mueller was with the FBI? Is that what the deal was, that they were buddies there?
Yes, definitely. Mueller brought Weissman into the FBI as his deputy director, and I'm sure had worked closely with Weissman through Mueller's, quote, oversight, end quote, of the Enron task force FBI agents. There were a number of them assigned to the Enron task force, and they were participating in this yellow highlighting and hiding evidence, too.
When you saw that yellow highlighting, you had to go right up through the ceiling when you saw that, didn't you, Sidney?
I did. It was very late one evening when I saw that, and I absolutely went ballistic. I was so mad for 2 days I couldn't even talk.
I would imagine. You're looking at this, and you're a believer in America. You're a believer in the justice system, and you're looking at that and where it came from. It was just incredible to you, wasn't it?
It was. It absolutely was. It made me nauseous. It made me livid and nauseous and just ballistic.
And what happened? These people, they all got promoted. They got awards from the Attorney General, and they all got...
Alberto Gonzalez gave them all the Attorney General's Award of Excellence, and they got cash bonuses with that, I think. And, then they became Chief White House Counsel, General Counsel, Deputy Director of the FBI, the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division. That was Friedrich, who then rushed to indict Senator Stevens in another corrupted prosecution where they did exactly the same thing. And then Leslie Caldwell becomes head of the criminal division under President Obama, and they're just thicker than thieves.
Thicker than thieves, and you've got that all sitting there. When you're talking about draining the swamp, that's where it has to begin, in the Justice Department, right?
Yes, it must. I mean, everybody really needs to read License to Lie. You can get it on Kindle for as little as $8.99. Amazon is saying they're sold out now, but there's a shipment that's already arrived there and another shipment on the way. So you can order it from Amazon or you can order it from my website, licensetolive.com.
My God, the book's starting to sell finally.
Oh, yeah. Well, with Newt talked about it on Fox News this morning. He talked about it on NPR this morning. He tweeted about it again today. I mean, people, it's hard unless you read the book to know how much corrupt prosecutors affect our daily lives. And I'm not talking about prosecutors who are paid off or anything like that. I'm talking about a moral corruption, making it about themselves as opposed to about justice, making it about promoting their own careers and notching their belts with scalps of high-profile people or even, purported murderers when they get the wrong person. The Innocence Project frees people daily who have been wrongfully convicted and served decades in prison by virtue of misidentifications, but a lot of it's also, probably more than 50% of it is attributable to some form of prosecutorial misconduct. We have got to do better than that. And prosecutors, nobody holds them accountable for anything. Not only are they promoted, become state judges or federal judges or anything else. Well, actually, I should take that back. I don't know of any federal judge who falls in that category, but it's certainly possible when they are also becoming White House counsel and general counsel, deputy director of the FBI. But, we have got to stop this and do better and come up with a means to hold prosecutors accountable. Number one, they should be fired from the Department of Justice once they've committed any sort of what's called a Brady violation, which means hiding evidence favorable to the defense.
Right.
And number two, they ought to be disbarred.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Their object is to find if there is a crime and prosecute the crime, not to create a crime and pin it on somebody.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for them to be digging and digging and digging until they can make something up, it's not a proper use of prosecutorial resources.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The tax dollars that were wasted by the Enron task force, I can't even imagine how many hundreds of millions of dollars it was.
Well, what do you think they're doing now with this Russian probe? The same thing. Millions of dollars, adding more and more people to that, looking for anything when there's nothing there. If they want to look at the Russian probe signal, why don't they look at the fact that Bill Clinton got $500,000, that Hillary Clinton got $1.5 million, $150 million, 140 to 150 for the Clinton Foundation, and they cut that deal selling 10% or 20% of our uranium to Russia. Why isn't that pretty blatant and obvious?
It looks that way to me. I mean, I'd put that on my list of the countless crimes of Hillary Clinton that certainly warrants more investigation than this whole, quote, collusion mess, end quote. And by the way, collusion, I don't know, they're using that word because it just sounds bad. There's no crime of collusion.
Well, I mean, here the president sits next to Mr. Putin, or his wife sits next to him, and all of a sudden they're colluding. This is a major thing. And it's absolute insanity, isn't it?
It is. It's nothing short of insanity.
Now, you wrote an article a while back that I'd like to refer back to, and this was talking about James Comey and also Loretta Lynch. They should be looked at for not impeached for whitewashing Clinton's crimes. And they definitely should have been impeached for that. Are we going to look at these two people? They were obstructing, corrupting justice to protect the power elite. That's exactly what happened with that, to protect them. That meeting between Lynch and Clinton on the tarmac, isn't that enough to have her really looked at? How much blatant evidence do we need against these people, and why has the Justice Department not gone up against them?
I have have no idea, Erskine. I mean, that's one of the most flagrant violations I can imagine. And the timeline, if you just go look at Cheryl Atkinson, did a great timeline on her website of the whole Clinton thing and the meeting on the tarmac and Comey's press conference and all of that. Just the timeline is practically an indictment.
You've been calling for that since a year before, for a couple of years now, that it needed to be looked at, and nothing happened. Nothing's happened. And I'm looking at it, and it seems to me like the best defense is an offense. But this is a no-brainer to take care of and get taken care of. We'll be right back with Sidney Powell, Licensed to Lie. Get a copy of that book. Man, I'm telling you, it reads like it's an incredible book, but it's all true.
So why don't you just kick back and let's listen to Erskine overnight while I puff on my favorite stogie. Hey now, I wouldn't lie to you.
Talking with Sidney Powell. The book is called Licensed to Lie. It's the most incredible book that you're going to read, and it's all true. That's what's so disgusting about it, is it's all true. And I say disgusting because it absolutely is. You're thinking that they're working for us, that it's a Department of Justice. No, it has been a Department of Injustice. You've had lots of details about Mr. Holder, the former Attorney General, lots of details about a lot of these people, and nothing has happened to them. Well, I'm looking at this with Comey and Loretta Lynch. Now, one of the things about Mr. Mueller, he was lead attorney, chief attorney for HSBC Bank. HSBC Bank was laundering money from the Mexican cartels through Iran. He was their lead attorney defending them. That is Mr. Mueller's background. He's been dirty for a long time. Nobody's talked about that, have they?
I didn't even know that. I haven't done any research, per se, on Mr. Mueller. He's mentioned in the book a few times because of his role in that. But, you know,
Mr. Comey worked for Lockheed Martin. He got a number of different contracts through the State Department for Lockheed Martin. And then after he got through the State Department, under the control of Hillary Clinton, after he got those contracts, Lockheed Martin gave him $6 million golden parachute out of the company after he got the contracts for them. There's
and
another
he was one of those prosecutors who like to take down high-profile people for his own self-aggrandizement, too.
Yeah, he put those in. It was like taking scalps and hanging them on his belt, wasn't it?
Exactly, same type of thing. And you know, along with Preet Bharara, you know, his convictions have been melting away recently. You know, he's on the task force with Mueller now too. I mean, the people he has chosen are just. I've just been appalled, absolutely appalled. And I want your listeners to be the first to know that on my Licensed to Lie website, I uploaded an index today under a heading, take a peek, see who's named in Licensed to Lie. That's the only place the index is. So they can go there and get our homemade index of who all is named in the book.
If you really want it, you've got to get the book and read the epilogue. Because in the epilogue, you do an index of everybody and all of the names of people, don't you?
Yes, and most of them wound up helping run the Obama administration.
Oh, my goodness. When you're looking at this, it goes all the way from the top down, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Now,
shocking.
World War II hero, legend Ted Stevens died in the crash of a private plane after the jury verdict was thrown out. His Senate seat lost in the election. The balance of power changed to the Senate. The senator never had a chance to see the Schulke report or introduce the legislation he sought in his desire to make sure this did not happen to others. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski picked up the torch and introduced the Fairness and Disclosure of Evidence Act. But she also is the one who's stopping any movement to get rid of Obamacare. They got what they wanted. There were key people who had to get out of the way. They had to get them out of the way, and they did whatever was necessary to get them out of the way, wasn't it?
Apparently so. I mean, that's
You're watching a public lynching is what this was.
Yeah, it really was. And Senator Stevens was just beloved in Alaska. Absolutely beloved. He only lost by a few thousand votes, even after the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
Right.
And then it was a few months later that an FBI agent, a good young idealistic one, broke ranks with his superiors and filed a whistleblower complaint. That's what really blew the whole Stevens case up, with an FBI agent who just couldn't contact.
Now, what they're looking for is fair administration of justice, accountability at the highest level. They were destroying evidence. They had security breaches and sale of the State Department. All that came from Judge Sullivan that was talking about it, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Judge Sullivan, talk about going ballistic. I've got in the book his lecture and statements to the packed courtroom when he absolutely excoriated the Department of Justice lawyers for their misconduct.
Not just the lawyers. He went all the way to the top to Eric Holder.
Yeah, he was. It's priceless. You couldn't have heard a pin drop in that courtroom that day. I would have paid money and bought popcorn for it.
Well, we are getting some new judges. We've got a new judge on the Supreme Court. That's a good thing, I think. What do you think?
I really like Justice Gorsuch now, I should say. He's just an outstanding jurist, and, of course, nobody will agree with absolutely everything he does, but in terms of integrity and intelligence and credentials, there was no one more qualified. I actually predicted that he would be the choice.
Now, do you look for Sessions to stay with everything that's going on? It appears that he hasn't got the strength to do what needs to be done to clean out drain the swamp.
I don't know. I think he's a really good man, and there are a lot of things he's doing that I agree with. I think he's handicapped by some of the people that are around him. I can't fathom why anybody chose Rod Rosenstein to be number 2 at Department of Justice. I think he was the only United States attorney that Obama kept on at the change, when he became president. So essentially he was an Obama appointee as U.S. attorney, and I forgot which district he was in, somewhere in Maryland. But to have him as number 2 in the Justice Department, I mean, he's friends with Comey, he's friends with Mueller. I mean, they've worked together for years. And that's why we wound up with Comey leaking the memo, and all of a sudden, within a matter of hours, Rosenstein names Mueller. I can't imagine that the 3 of those men, including Weissman, who was in the head of the fraud section at DOJ at the time, didn't, talk about how to handle all this and decide that they'd take care of it. And I simply can't trust that kind of decision-making.
One of the reasons he's still there is because Mr. Holder covered up for so many people in the Department of Justice, didn't he?
I'm sure that's true, yes. In fact, Holder was mentioned by the Project on Government Oversight for protecting hundreds of violations of ethical regulations by his prosecutors, and he wouldn't release the names of any of them.
No. One of the keys was one of the prosecutors, Nicholas Marsh, he actually hung himself because he had favorable evidence for Senator Ted Stevens for his defense. He hid the evidence that he couldn't take what he had done because he knew he had destroyed Senator Stevens, right?
Yes, I feel, very badly about that, and I start the book with Nicholas Marsh's suicide because I want people to realize that misconduct takes a toll on everybody. It takes a toll on the people who commit it, as well as the victims of it.
It costs lives. That's the other key. License to lie is not just about people going to jail, but it's also lives. We'll be right back with Sidney Powell.
don't go postal.
Now that you don't have to kick dick around anymore, you're probably like all the rest. You listen to Erskine overnight, don't you?
Do kind of a summary real quick of what happened with the Enron case before the Supreme Court. Dreeden had lost Justice O'Connor, who was clearly appalled. The government got the conviction, got him to plead guilty, apparently on the basis that if he asked somebody else to do what was perfectly lawful for him to do, it'd violate the statute. Dreeden was going down for the count. That's right, Justice O'Connor. Perhaps only Dreeden did not know, but it was game over for the government. The only question was how many votes would be in the majority to reverse the conviction of Arthur Anderson under a statute that wasn't intended to reach the conduct alleged upon a jury instruction that eliminated the key elements of any crime, criminal intent. No criminal intent.
No, absolutely not. What Anderson did was lawful at the time. Later, Congress enacted a statute as part of Sarbanes-Oxley to go even farther out to make destruction of documents in some circumstances unlawful. But Arthur Anderson had no legal duty to retain anything that they had destroyed when they did it and didn't need to. They kept everything they should have kept anyway and provided it to the government. In fact, if they were trying to destroy all the bad evidence, they sure missed.
They really did. That's what's so funny about this. And then they talk about Mr. Holder. All the negative publicity and Judge Sullivan's outrage gave Holder a perfect political opportunity. He could ride in on a white horse, be the good guy, stand up for true justice, and move to dismiss the case against Senator Stevens. After all, it was filed and prosecuted while George W. Bush was still president. He was the first black attorney general and a Democrat, no less, standing up for an 85-year-old Republican senator. He'd been denied a fair trial by the Republican-appointed prosecutors. Couldn't have been scripted any better by Michael Moore. I mean, that was incredible, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And I actually had hope at the time, and you'll see when your listeners will see when they read the book, I really had hope at the time that Holder was going to make a big difference in the Department of Justice.
Oh, he made a big difference, didn't he? Fast and Furious and everything else. He was Mr. Cover-Up.
Yeah, he became the cover-up expert at DOJ, and he had Rumler as the cover-up expert in the White House for Benghazi and all of that, and Weissman is the cover-up expert in the FBI. They were covered up with cover-up.
Now, nothing's happened to any of these people, Sidney. What, do you expect anything to happen? People were talking when he was running for president, jail Hillary, do this, do that. Nothing has happened. We're 6 months into his term, and he's just let the Russian thing go, and nothing has happened as far as going to any of the corruption and any of the corrupt people. I think the new gentleman he brought in, I forgot what his name is, the Italian gentleman, I think he's going to be getting rid of some of the people, it looks like, who have been leaking things. But it goes beyond leaking. It goes to corruption of the department.
Yeah, Anthony Scaramucci, he's terrific. Yeah,
I like him.
I like him a lot. I've known him for a little while, and I like him a lot.
I mean, he
really makes a significant difference there. And that's exactly what's needed at DOJ. We need to stop the crap. The American people are sick and tired of political bull and crap coming out of Washington.
Are they going to let Trump do this, or are they going to be successful in taking Trump out as president? What do you think?
I don't think they're going to be able to take him out. He didn't commit any crimes. I'm 99.9% sure that all of this is a bunch of hooey, and he is a fighter, and I think he's now pulling more people around him who are fighters too. So
he's got to pull people around him whom he can trust, not people who are wishy-washy, and because so many of these people are so good at playing one side against another, aren't they?
Exactly, and we need people in power who don't want power, who really believe in the importance of fairness and justice and honesty in serving the people. We have lost the concept of public servants. All those people that we pay with our tax dollars in D.C., from the file clerk through the head of the Senate Senate and the President of the United States. They're supposed to be public servants.
Well, I don't think that Mr. Scaramucci is in there for the power. I think he's in there to try to straighten things up. And I think that's a major plus.
He's there to try to help. He's there to try to help and make things better. And that's the attitude we need from everybody who draws the government paycheck.
Absolutely. So you're feeling more optimistic, especially when he talks about getting rid of 1,500 people at the Justice Department and maybe up to over 2,000 at the State Department. You're feeling much more optimistic. I know I am.
Yes, that's a good start toward draining the swamp.
That is a good start.
Yeah, there are a whole lot of people on the federal government payroll that don't add value to the process in any way, shape, or form.
Were you surprised the way Newt has taken on License to Lie and the way that it has come up? You had Orrin Hatch, who gave a copy to Loretta Lynch and told her, said, read this book first. Well, it didn't do any good because she was part of the problem. She wasn't part of the solution. But he's saying, get into this, look at this. I think that it's altogether possible Mr. Scaramucci and the president may have read License to Lie.
If they haven't yet, they will soon. I do believe Mr. Scaramucci has read it. I don't know if the president has. He's been a little bit busy. But hopefully he might get a chance to sometime soon.
This breaks it open, tells you what's going on exactly, and you're not going to believe it. I went through this. I said, she's got to be making this up. The names are real. If it wasn't real, you would have had lawsuits on top of you.
Oh, yeah. Even my brother said he had to keep pinching himself to believe it was real as he read it. And he was around when I lived through it. So, yes, and I've staked my law license on the accuracy of the material in the book. Today
Absolutely.
It's bestseller in law and ethics.
Don't go getting your pantyhose in a bunch.
Here at the retirement home, we always listen to Erskine overnight. It's all we got to listen to.
License to Lie became a bestseller at Amazon. It's sold out, but they're getting some more copies in, so go get it. It's also got the Kindle version, very reasonable. And you had no coverage from any of the major media. Nobody wanted to talk to you, did they?
No. In fact, one time I was on one show, they told me not to mention the book, and there were definitely other things to talk about, but the book was relevant then. So, yeah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate Speaker Gingrich getting out there and letting people know it exists.
I mean, it's made a difference, but the more people who look at this, the more they look at it, people are going to be demanding that something happen to people like Weissman. They're going to be demanding Kathleen Rumler, something happens with her. They're going to be demanding that something happens with Hillary Clinton. They're going to be demanding that something happens with Comey, with Loretta Lynch, with all of these people. They're going to be demanding it when they read this book and they see the lives that were destroyed, jobs were destroyed, people were destroyed. For what? For what did it really benefit them, Sydney?
Absolutely nothing except their own promotions and their own egos. I
mean, people wouldn't believe this, would they?
No, I mean, you have to read it and, like I said, pinch yourself to believe it. I'm not sure I'd have believed it if I hadn't lived through it. I mean, there were any number of times I thought, oh, my God, this can't be real.
Yeah, but because you believed in the justice system, didn't you?
Exactly. I'd worked in it for 10 years as a prosecutor in 3 different districts across the country for 9 different U.S. attorneys from both political parties, and no U.S. attorney I'd ever worked with would have put up with this kind of behavior from a prosecutor for 2 seconds.
And yet it was happening from the very pinnacle of power, wasn't it?
Exactly. And that is so offensive. It just must be stopped. And you're right. The more people read this book, the more people will rise up to say it must be stopped. We need to abolish absolute immunity for prosecutors. They have absolute immunity from any kind of lawsuit. They can literally commit obstruction of justice and perjury or subordination of perjury, which is what these prosecutors did, and wind up as Chief White House Counsel, General Counsel, Deputy Director of the FBI.
Absolutely. It's happened. It's happened. Not could. It has happened. All right. So you're feeling optimistic now, and I'm sure that you're getting calls from a lot of people who are saying, yes, you were right on target. You feel justified, and you feel like it's coming out okay for you now?
Oh, yes. I feel much better about it. I mean, it's been a long and curvy and bumpy road to get people to pay attention to this issue, but there's now, a major effort for bipartisan criminal justice reform that this should be a part of. And as Judge Kaczynski said when he wrote the foreword, this should start a national conversation on the topic, and it has. I've spoken to 2 judicial conferences about it, the 5th Circuit and the 9th Circuit, and those are 2 of the biggest circuits in the country. So a lot of federal judges have known about it for several years now and are paying attention to it, and I can tell it's making a difference there. So
here's an oath that people should take, written by Sidney Powell. Try to forget yourself in service of others. When we think too much of ourselves, our own interests, we easily become despondent. When we work for others, our efforts return to bless us. Your efforts are going to bless you. Thank you for all you've done. America's Sweet Dreams. Get a copy of License to Lie. That is one of the best books I've read in years. You'll love it.